2 months after the battle with the Ravagers, Captain Hyan-Woo stood in the Great Hall of Nexus Prime watching the most important debate in galactic history. The Galactic Council had been arguing for days about what to do with humanity, and today they would finally vote. Ambassador Keth had kept his promise and spoken passionately about how humans had saved his people. He showed recordings of the battle and testimonies from freed prisoners. He argued that humanity's violent nature was not a threat but a necessity in a galaxy that contained predators. But not all the council members were convinced. Ambassador Veltar still believed that humans were too dangerous to trust. She stood before the assembly with her forearms spread wide. Yes, the humans saved the Zeridians, she said, but at what cost? They used violence efficiently and without hesitation. What happens when they decide that we are their enemies? Other council members had different concerns. Some worried that giving humans official permission to use violence would encourage other species to become more aggressive. Others argued that the Ravager threat had been growing for years and only humans had been able to stop it. Dr. Sojin sat in the observation area watching the debate. She had spent weeks presenting her research to various council committees, explaining the connection between human violence and human creativity. Many alien scientists were fascinated by her findings, but others remained skeptical. Most surprising voice in the debate came from Commander Zixlan of the Ethereal Collective. His crystal body caught the light as he spoke, and his voice rang like music through the hall. For 10,000 years we have built a civilization based on peace and cooperation, he said. It has brought us great prosperity and knowledge, but it has also made us vulnerable. When Redditors arose, we had no answer except to call for help and hope someone would come. He turned to look directly at the human delegation. The humans did not just defeat the Ravagers, they eliminated a threat that we were too civilized to handle ourselves. Perhaps it is time to admit that our peaceful galaxy needs guardians who understand the language of violence. The debate continued for hours with representatives from dozens of species offering their opinions. Finally, the council president called for the vote. The hall fell silent as each member cast their decision. Electronically, Captain Hyan-Woo held his breath as the results appeared on the massive display screen in the center of the hall. The vote was closer than anyone had expected, but the outcome was clear. By a margin of 3 votes, humanity had been accepted into galactic civilization, but the acceptance came with conditions. The council had created a new classification for humanity: guardian species. They would be integrated into galactic society, but with a unique and specific role. Council President Morden stood to announce the decision. Humanity will serve as the primary defenders of galactic peace, he said. When diplomatic solutions fail and violence becomes necessary, humans will be called upon to act on behalf of all species. The role came with both privileges and restrictions. Humans would have access to galactic technology and trade routes, but they would also be under constant observation. Any abuse of their position would result in immediate expulsion from galactic society. Captain Hyan-Woo was promoted to admiral and given command of the new Galactic Defense Corps. The organization would be based on Earth but would include volunteers from other species who wanted to learn human military techniques. Dr. Sojin became the first director of strategic psychology, tasked with helping other species understand when and how force should be applied. Her research would be used to train a new generation of galactic peacekeepers who could deal with threats that traditional diplomacy could not solve. Colonel Taman was put in charge of training programs that would teach defensive combat techniques to peaceful species. The goal was not to make them aggressive, but to give them the tools they needed to protect themselves when guardians were not available. Wu was appointed as the first director of galactic relations. Her job was to build bridges between humans and other species through cultural exchange programs. She organized events where humans shared not just their military knowledge but their art, music, and philosophy. The reaction on Earth was mixed. Yunhai and her followers were pleased that humanity had been accepted but worried about the burden of being galactic guardians. They organized peace groups that would monitor human military actions and speak out against any abuse of power. Dong Ho and his supporters were proud that human strength had been recognized, but they understood the weight of responsibility that came with their new role. They formed veteran organizations that would help train the new generation of human defenders. Young pilot Suman became one of the first graduates of the new Guardian Academy. She learned advanced alien technologies while teaching other species how to think tactically in dangerous situations. Her squadron became a model for integrated military units. Engineer Byung Ho was given access to alien technology that he had only dreamed of. He worked with scientists from across the galaxy to develop new defensive systems that could protect peaceful worlds from future threats. Ambassador Keth returned to his home world as a hero, but he never forgot the price that had been paid for his people's freedom. He established a memorial to all those who had died in Ravager attacks and made sure that future generations would remember both the cost of violence and the cost of being unable to defend themselves. The first real test of the new system came 6 months later when a group of rogue aliens began attacking trade routes in the Outer Rim systems. The Galactic Council sent diplomats first, but the rogues ignored all attempts at negotiation. Hyan-Woo received the call for help and deployed a mixed force of human and alien defenders. The operation was swift and decisive, but it was also carefully controlled. The rogues were captured rather than killed, and they were given fair trials before being sent to rehabilitation centers. The galaxy watched nervously as humans demonstrated their military capabilities in service of galactic law. The operation was successful, but it reminded everyone that humanity's violent nature was now an official part of galactic civilization. Sojin continued her research and made new discoveries about the psychology of violence. She found that humans were not unique in their capacity for aggression, but they were unusual in their ability to control and direct that aggression toward specific goals. Other species began requesting human advisors to help them deal with their own internal conflicts. Planets that had been struggling with crime or civil unrest found that human techniques could restore order without excessive bloodshed. The Guardian Corps grew slowly and carefully. Admiral Hyanwu insisted on rigorous psychological testing for all applicants, human or alien. Every member had to prove that they understood the difference between necessary violence and needless destruction. Years passed and the galaxy began to change. Trade routes that had been abandoned due to pirate activity were reopened. Peaceful species felt safer knowing that guardians were watching over them. The Ravager threat became a memory rather than an ongoing nightmare, but the role of guardian was not easy. Humans had to constantly prove that they could be trusted with their power. Every action was scrutinized and debated. Some species still feared that humans would eventually turn their weapons against the innocent. Admiral Hyanwu often stood in his office looking out at the stars and thinking about the burden that humanity had accepted. They were no longer just another species trying to find their place in the galaxy. They were the guardians who ensured that peaceful civilizations could continue to exist in peace. The final scene of this chapter in human history took place on Earth, where a new monument had been built in the center of the capital city. It was dedicated to all the humans throughout history who had used violence to protect the innocent rather than to destroy. The inscription on the monument was simple but powerful. Our greatest weakness became our greatest strength, not because we learned to fight, but because we learned when not to fight. A kill count above its population was no longer seen as a mark of shame, but as evidence of the price humanity had paid to learn the true meaning of both violence and peace. They had become the guardians because they alone understood that sometimes the most violent species could also be the most committed to protecting life. The galaxy was safer because monsters had chosen to become heroes and humanity had found its place among the stars. Not despite their dark history, but because of the wisdom they had gained from walking through that darkness and choosing to step into the light. The Ravager's stronghold was hidden in a dead system where 3 planets orbited a dying star. The largest planet had been turned into a fortress with massive weapons and slave camps, where captured aliens were forced to work until they died. The sight filled Captain Hyanwu with cold anger. Pilot Su Min sat in the cockpit of her fighter ship studying the enemy positions through her scanner. The Ravagers had 50 ships, but they were spread out and overconfident. They had never faced an enemy that would fight back with real skill and determination. This is going to be easier than I thought, she said into her radio. Many of their ships are not even powered up. They think no one would dare attack them. Here Colonel Taman's voice came through the communication system. That is their first mistake. Never underestimate an enemy, especially one you have never fought before. The attack began at dawn when the dying star cast strange red light across the system. Captain Hyanwu led the main assault while Suman commanded the fighter squadrons. The Ceridian ships stayed back at first, providing support with their powerful shields. The first Ravager ship to detect them was a scout vessel that immediately sent out an alarm, but before the message could be completed, Suman fighters destroyed the communication array with precise strikes. The scout ship exploded in a ball of fire and metal. Ravager Captain Thekmore was eating breakfast in his command ship when the alarm started. Screaming, he was a massive creature with 4 arms and skin like black leather. Across his body were scars from 100 battles. He had never lost a fight, and he did not plan to start now. What is happening? He roared at his crew. Unknown ships are attacking the outer perimeter, his first officer reported. They appeared to be human vessels. Thekmore laughed with a sound like grinding metal. Humans, those weaklings from the death world. What can they possibly do to us? But as he watched his tactical display, his laugh died. The human ships moved like nothing he had ever seen. They did not charge straight ahead like angry animals or retreat like frightened prey. Instead, they used complex patterns of attack and retreat that confused his gunner. Su led her fighters in a maneuver that she had learned from studying ancient human air battles. She split her squadron into 3 groups that attacked from different angles. When the Ravager ships turned to face one group, the other 2 would strike from behind. The Ravagers found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to be everywhere at once. Every time they thought they had the humans cornered, another attack would come from an unexpected direction. Their weapons could not track targets that moved so unpredictably on his command ship. Captain Hyanwu watched the battle unfold exactly as they had planned. The Ravagers were good at intimidating peaceful species, but they had never learned to fight opponents who understood warfare as well as they did. Sojin was monitoring Ravager communications from her position on the human flagship. She could hear the confusion and growing fear in their voices as their tactics failed. That psychological warfare was working exactly as planned. Colonel Taman led the Ceridian volunteers in their first real combat. The gentle aliens had never fired weapons before, but they fought with desperate courage, knowing that their families depended on them. One young Ceridian named Callison destroyed 3 Ravager fighters with her first shot. "Never knew I could do this," she said over the radio. "I never knew I could be strong. You were always strong." Colonel Taman replied, "You just needed to learn when to use that strength." The battle turned when Captain Hyan-Woo spotted the Ravager command ship. He led a direct assault on Vecmore flagship, using a tactic that seemed impossibly reckless. The human ships charged straight at the massive enemy vessel as if they planned to ram it. Ordered all his weapons to fire on the approaching humans, but at the last second the human ships scattered like leaves in the wind. They had used the charge as a distraction while Sumin fighters slipped around behind the command ship and destroyed its main engines. The command ship was now dead in space, unable to maneuver or escape. Vecmore realized for the first time in his life that he might actually lose this battle. The humans had outfought him at every turn, but Vecmore had one last card to play. He activated his communication system and broadcast to all the human ships. "Human commander, I have thousands of Zeridian prisoners in the slave camps on the planet below. If you do not retreat immediately, I will execute them all." Cap Hyan-Woo felt his blood turn to ice. This was exactly the kind of situation that had made humans so violent throughout their history. When innocents were threatened, some humans would do anything to save them. Dar Sojin voice came over the private channel. "Captain, we should negotiate. We cannot let those people debut." Colonel Taman had a different idea. "Captain, I have a plan, but it is very dangerous. Tell me." Captain Hyan-Woo said. The colonel explained his strategy. It involved a direct assault on the slave camps while the battle was still going on. It would require perfect timing and incredible skill, but it might work. Do it. Captain Hyan-Woo ordered. Colonel Taman led a team of human commandos down to the planet's surface in small stealth ships. They landed near the slave camps and began moving through the shadows. The camps were guarded, but the guards were not expecting an attack from the ground. The rescue operation was swift and brutal. The human soldiers used tactics that they had learned from centuries of warfare. They struck without warning, eliminated the guards, and freed the prisoners before anyone could raise an alarm. By the time Vecmore realized what was happening, the prisoners were already being evacuated. His threat had become meaningless, and his defeat was complete. The final phase of the battle was psychological. Dr. Sojin activated the special broadcasts that Giwu had prepared. The messages were sent to every Ravager ship still fighting, and they exploited the fears and insecurities that all violent criminals shared. "You think you understand violence," the broadcasts said, "but you are just bullies who pick on the weak. Now you face those who learned violence from necessity, who use it to protect rather than destroy." The broadcasts included recordings of human history battles where outnumbered forces had defeated larger enemies through skill and determination. They showed the Ravagers that they were not facing prey animals but apex predators, who had chosen to use their abilities for protection. One by one, the Ravager ships began to surrender. Their crews had never faced opponents who were more skilled at violence than they were. The psychological pressure combined with their military defeats broke their will to fight. Vecmore was the last to give up. He sat in his disabled command ship watching his fleet surrender around him. He had built his reputation on being the most feared predator in the galaxy, but now he was afraid. "Commander," he said into his radio, "I surrender." Captain Hyan-Woo accepted the surrender, but he made it clear that the Ravagers would face justice for their crimes. The freed prisoners would testify about the horrors they had endured, and the galaxy would see what happened when predators were allowed to operate without opposition. As the battle ended, Ambassador Keth sent a message to Captain Hyan-Woo. "You have saved my people," he said, "but more than that, you have shown the galaxy something important. You have proven that violence in the right hands can protect the innocent." The news of the human victory spread across the galaxy faster than light. Peaceful species that had been terrorized by pirates for years suddenly had hope. The same humans that everyone feared had used their dangerous nature to protect those who could not protect themselves on Earth. The fighting between the two groups stopped as people watched the news broadcasts. Su-hee and Dong-ho both realized that they had been partially wrong. Humans did not need to change their nature or embrace unlimited violence. They needed to learn when and how to use their strength wisely. Dar Sojin received messages from scientists across the galaxy asking to study human tactics and psychology. Even species that still feared humans were curious about how they had defeated enemies that had seemed unstoppable. The Galactic Council called an emergency session to discuss what had happened. Some members were angry that humans had acted without permission, but others pointed out that the humans had solved a problem that the Council had failed to address. Ambassador Keth prepared to keep his promise. He would stand before the Council and argue that humanity deserved a place in galactic civilization, not despite their violent nature, but because of their ability to channel that violence toward protection. Captain Hyan-Woo looked out at the stars and realized that everything had changed. The galaxy would never see humans the same way again. They were no longer just the species with a kill count above their population. They were the species that had learned what violence could protect. The secret message came in the middle of the night when most of Earth was sleeping. Sumin was alone at her listening post when her equipment picked up a weak signal from deep space. The transmission was encrypted and hidden inside normal space traffic, but she had learned to spot these secret communications. Ambassador Keth of the Zeridian Republic wishes to speak with Earth representatives, the message said. Meet at coordinates 77 Alpha in 3 days. Come alone. Sumin immediately called Captain Hyan-Woo, who was still awake studying star charts in his office. When he heard about the message, he felt his heart start beating faster. This could be the chance they had been waiting for. Dr. Sojin, Colonel Taemin, and Jiwoo met Captain Hyunwoo at the spaceport before dawn. They boarded a small, fast ship that could avoid detection by Galactic Council sensors. The trip to the meeting coordinates took 2 days, during which they all wondered what they would find. The meeting place was an asteroid field far from any inhabited system. When they arrived, they found a small Zeridian ship waiting for them. It looked like a silver teardrop with gentle curves and no visible weapons. The contrast with human military ships could not have been greater. Ambassador Keth met them in the cargo bay of his ship. He was tall and thin, with pale green skin and large, gentle eyes that seemed to hold great sadness. His species looked fragile, like they might break if handled roughly. When he spoke, his voice was soft and musical. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I know this meeting violates Galactic Council orders, but my people are dying and no one else will help us." Captain Hyunwoo stepped forward. "We are honored that you reached out to us, Ambassador Keth. Tell us about your situation." Ambassador Keth activated a holographic display that showed the Zeridian territory. It had once included 25 peaceful trading colonies, but now only 8 remained. The others were marked in red to show they had been destroyed. "The Ravagers came 2 years ago," Ambassador Keth explained. "They are not like normal pirates who steal cargo and leave. These creatures destroy everything they touch. They burn our cities, kill our people, and take our children as slaves." Dr. Sojin studied the display. "What makes them so effective against your defenses?" Ambassador Keth looked embarrassed. "We have no real defenses. Our ships have shields and escape pods, but no weapons. Our entire military philosophy is based on running away or hiding. We never learned how to fight because we never needed to." Colonel Taemin frowned. "But surely the Galactic Council peacekeepers can help you." Ambassador Keth shook his head. "The peacekeepers are good at stopping small disputes between civilized species, but they are not equipped to handle real violence by the time they arrive and go through their procedures. The Ravagers have already moved on to their next target." Jiwoo asked, "Who are these Ravagers? Where do they come from?" "They are outcasts from many different species," Ambassador Keth said. "Criminals and killers who were exiled from their home worlds. They have joined together under a leader called Vexkar, and they have grown bold because they know that peaceful species will not fight back with real force." Captain Hyunwoo realized that Dr. Sojin had been right. The galaxy commitment to nonviolence had created a perfect environment for predators who were willing to use violence. These peaceful species were like defenseless prey animals. "What do you want from us?" Captain Hyunwoo asked. Ambassador Keth hesitated before answering. "I want you to save my people. I know that humans are considered dangerous by the rest of the galaxy, but maybe that is exactly what we need, someone who understands violence and is not afraid to use it." The humans looked at each other. This was exactly the opportunity they had hoped for, but it was also incredibly dangerous. If they failed, or if the Galactic Council found what, they could be banned from space forever. "What would you offer in return?" Captain Hyunwoo asked. Ambassador Keth straightened up. "If you can stop the Ravagers and save my remaining colonies, I will stand before the Galactic Council and argue that human violence, when properly directed, serves a vital purpose in maintaining galactic peace. I will tell them that sometimes predators can only be stopped by other predators." Colonel Taemin stepped forward. "You understand that fighting the Ravage will require real violence. People will die." Ambassador Keth nodded with tears in his large eyes. "I understand. But if we do nothing more, of my people will die anyway. At least this way they have a chance." Dr. Sojin was studying the tactical information on the display. "How many ships do the Ravagers have?" "About 50 combat vessels," Ambassador Keth said. "They are not as advanced as Galactic Council ships, but they are heavily armed and their crews are experienced fighters." Colonel Taemin smiled grimly. 50 ships, we can work with that. How many people do you have who are willing to fight?" Ambassador Keth looked surprised. "We are not fighters. We do not know how to fight." "Then we will teach you," Captain Hyunwoo said. "The first lesson of warfare is that sometimes violence is the only language that Redditors understand." They spent the next week planning the mission. Ambassador Keth provided detailed information about Ravager tactics and the locations of their bases. The Zeridians had been studying their enemies even though they did not know how to fight them. Engineer Bangho worked around the clock to design new weapon systems that combined human military technology with Zeridian shield generators. The result was ships that could hit hard and take damage, something the Ravagers had never faced before. Dr. Sojin studied everything they knew about the Ravager leadership. She used her understanding of human psychology to create profiles of the enemy commanders' most violent criminals that had similar patterns of behavior, whether they were human or alien. Colonel Taemin trained a group of Zeridian volunteers in basic combat tactics. Most of them had never held a weapon before, but they were motivated by the memory of their lost colonies. The colonel was patient but firm, teaching them that sometimes gentle people had to do violent things to protect what they loved. Jiwoo worked on psychological warfare strategies. She prepared broadcasts that would be sent to the Ravager fleet designed to create fear and confusion among their ranks. The messages would use techniques that humans had developed over centuries of conflict. Captain Hyunwoo coordinated everything and planned the overall strategy. The key was not just to defeat the Ravagers, but to do it in a way that would prove to the galaxy that human violence could be controlled and directed toward protection rather than destruction. As they prepared for the mission, Captain Hyanwu gathered his team for a final meeting. "Why we are doing this," he said. "We are not just saving the Zeridians, we are proving that humanity deserves a place in the galaxy. We are showing that monsters can choose to be heroes." Darsojin nodded. "Our ancestors learned about violence the hard way through thousands of years of war and conflict. Now we can use that hard-earned knowledge to protect those who never had to learn those lessons." Colonel Taman checked his weapons one last time. "The Ravagers think they understand violence, but they only know how to destroy. We will show them what violence looks like when it is used to protect and defend." Zhu activated the communication systems. "The galaxy is watching, even if they do not know it yet. What we do here will echo across the stars." Ambassador Keth joined them for the final preparations. "My people have been pacifists for 10,000 years, he said. "But today we learn that sometimes peace must be defended with force." A mixed fleet of human and Zeridian ships launched into hyperspace heading toward the Ravager's stronghold. As they traveled through the strange dimensions of faster-than-light space, Captain Hyanwu thought about all the humans throughout history who had used violence to protect the innocent. Now it was their turn to prove that Earth kill count above its population was not just a mark of shame but evidence of the price they had paid to learn when violence was necessary and when it must be stopped. 6 months had passed since Captain Hyanwu and his team returned to Earth with the terrible news. The whole world had watched the video recordings of their meeting with the aliens. Everyone on Earth now knew that the galaxy saw humans as violent monsters who could not be trusted. The news had spread like wildfire across Earth. Within days, every person on the planet knew about the meeting at Nexus Prime. The reaction was not what Captain Hyanwu had expected. Instead of bringing people together, the news had divided them into two angry groups. In the capital city of South Korea, a large crowd had gathered in the main square. A woman named Yoon Hee stood on a platform, speaking to thousands of people who had come to hear her words. She was a teacher who had spent her whole life working for peace, and she believed that humans should accept the alien offer. "We must be honest with ourselves," she said to the crowd. "Our history is filled with violence and death. The aliens are right to fear us. If we truly want peace, we must be willing to change our very nature." The crowd cheered and held up signs that said things like, "Change our DNA and peace through science." Unit had become the leader of a growing movement of people who believed that genetic modification was the only way forward for humanity. But across the city, in a different square, another crowd was listening to a very different message. A man named Dong Ho stood before them, speaking with passion and anger. He was a soldier who had fought in the last war on Earth, and he had scars on his face to prove it. "They want to cut out our hearts," he shouted to his supporters. "They want to make us weak and helpless like sheep. Our strength, our fire, our willingness to fight. These things are not bugs in our system, they are features." Dong Ho supporters were mostly soldiers, police officers, and people who worked in dangerous jobs. They held signs that said, "Stay human and never surrender." They believed that changing human nature would destroy everything that made humans special. The division was tearing families apart in homes across Earth. Parents argued with their children, husbands fought with wives, and friends stopped speaking to each other. The question was simple, but the answer seemed impossible. Should humans change their nature to join the galaxy or stay true to themselves and remain alone? Darsojin barely noticed the fighting in the streets. She had locked herself in her laboratory for months trying to understand the science behind human violence. She worked 18 hours a day, running tests and studying brain scans and genetic codes. She was looking for proof that human aggression served a purpose. Late one night, as she studied brain images on her computer, she made a discovery that changed everything. She found that the same parts of the brain that controlled violence also controlled creativity, passion, and love. The neural pathways that made humans capable of terrible acts also made them capable of beautiful art, amazing discoveries, and fierce protection of those they cared about. She called Captain Hyanwu immediately, even though it was 3 in the morning. "Hyanwu," she said. When he answered the phone, "I found something important, Captain." Hyanwu was at her lab within an hour. Even though he had been sleeping, he found Dr. Sojin surrounded by papers and empty coffee cups. Her eyes red from staring at computer screens for too long. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a brain scan on her monitor. "This is the brain of a famous artist, and this is the brain of a soldier who won medals for bravery, and this is the brain of a serial killer." Captain Hyanwu looked at the 3 images. They all showed activity in the same areas of the brain. The same parts that make us violent also make us creative, passionate, and protective. Dr. Sojin explained, "If we remove our capacity for violence, we might also lose our ability to create art, to make scientific breakthroughs, to love deeply, and to protect our families." Captain Hyanwu felt a chill run down his spine. "You are saying that our violence and our humanity come from the same source?" "Exactly," Dr. Sojin said. "We are not broken, we are complex. The aliens see only our capacity for destruction, but they do not understand that this same capacity drives everything beautiful about human nature." While Dr. Sojin worked in her lab, a young pilot named Sumen spent her days monitoring radio signals from space. She worked at a listening post outside the city where giant radio telescopes pointed toward the stars. Her job was to listen for any messages from the aliens, but what she heard instead was much more interesting. The alien communications were full of fear and panic. Distress calls came in every day from ships and colonies that were being attacked by pirates. The galaxy that seemed so peaceful and civilized was actually being terrorized by groups of violent criminal suitmen. Recorded every message and studied the patterns. She noticed that the attacks were getting worse and more frequent. The pirates seemed to be getting bolder because they knew that most alien species would not fight back with real force. She brought her findings to Captain Hyunwoo and showed him the recordings. "Captain, look at this," she said, playing a desperate message from an alien cargo ship. "We are under attack by pirates. Please send help. We have no weapons. We cannot defend ourselves." Captain Hyunwoo listened to message after message. Each one was the same: peaceful aliens being attacked by criminals, while the Galactic Council sent slow bureaucratic responses that usually arrived too late to help. "The same aliens who fear us are being eaten alive by predators," Captain Hyunwoo said. "They have become so committed to non-violence that they cannot protect themselves." Zuman nodded. "The pirates know this. They attack because they know there will be no real consequences. The galaxy's peaceful nature has created a perfect hunting ground for those willing to use violence." Captain Hyunwoo realized that they had stumbled onto something important. The aliens had created a society so focused on peace that they had forgotten how to deal with those who chose violence. They were like sheep, trying to negotiate with wolves. Meanwhile on Earth, the fighting between the two groups was getting worse. Yoonhee followers had organized protests outside military bases demanding that all weapons be destroyed. Dongho supporters had formed militia groups and were training for what they believed would be an alien invasion. The government was paralyzed by the division. The president had called for calm, but no one was listening. The world seemed to be tearing itself apart over a choice that had not even been made yet. Captain Hyunwoo called a meeting with his original team: Dr. Sojin, Colonel Taemin, and Ji-woo. They met in a secure room deep underground where they could speak freely without being overheard by the angry crowds above. "We have 1 year to prove ourselves," Captain Hyunwoo said. "But how can we prove anything when our own people are fighting each other?" Dr. Sojin presented her research about the connection between violence and creativity. Colonel Taemin talked about the military principle that sometimes you had to fight to protect peace. Ji-woo had been studying alien cultures and had learned that most of them had never faced a real external threat. "What if our reputation could become our strength?" Ji-woo suggested. "What if the galaxy needs exactly what they fear about us?" Colonel Taemin leaned forward. "What do you mean? Think about it," Ji-woo said. "The aliens are being terrorized by pirates, but they are too peaceful to fight back effectively. They need someone who understands violence, someone who can meet force with force, but they will never ask us for help." Dr. Sojin pointed out. "They are too afraid of us. Then we need to find someone who is desperate enough to take the risk." Captain Hyunwoo said, "Someone who needs our help badly enough to ignore the Galactic Council ruler." Su-min spoke up from where she had been quietly listening. "I might know someone. The Zeridian Republic has lost 17 colonies to pirates in the past year. Their ambassador sent several unofficial messages asking if anyone could help them." Captain Hyunwoo felt a spark of hope. "If we could help them, if we could show that human violence can be used to protect the innocent instead of destroy them, we would prove that monsters can choose to be heroes." Dr. Sojin finished. The team looked at each other with new determination. They had found their path forward. It would be dangerous and it would require them to work in secret against the wishes of the Galactic Council, but it might be their only chance to prove that humanity deserved a place among the stars outside the secure room. The crowds continued to fight over whether humans should change their nature, but deep underground people began planning to show the galaxy that human nature, when properly directed, could be exactly what the universe needed. Captain Hyunwoo felt his heart beating fast as he looked out the window of the human spaceship. The stars looked different here in deep space, far from Earth. The blue and white planet that had been his home for 35 years was now just a tiny dot behind them. He could not believe that humans had finally made it this far into space. That spaceship moved through the darkness toward a huge space station that looked like a giant metal flower. The station was called Nexus Prime, and it was where all the different alien species in the galaxy came to meet and talk. Captain Hyunwoo had read about it in the files, but seeing it with his own eyes was something else entirely. Dire Sojin walked up to stand beside him at the window. She was the smartest person Captain Hyunwoo had ever met, and she knew more about science than anyone else on Earth. She had helped build the faster-than-light engine that made this trip possible. Her black hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and she wore the same blue uniform as everyone else on the ship. "We are really doing this," she said quietly. "We are about to meet aliens for the first time in human history." Captain Hyunwoo nodded. "Yes, we are. Earth has been alone for so long. Now we can finally become part of something bigger than ourselves." Behind them, Colonel Taemin was checking his equipment for the 10th time that day. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and scars on his hands from years of military service. He did not trust easily, and he wanted to be ready for anything. The aliens had sent friendly messages, but Colonel Taemin had learned never to let his guard down. The fourth member of their team was Ji-woo, a young woman who had studied languages and cultures her whole life. She was the best diplomat Earth had ever produced, and she could speak 12 different human languages fluently. She had spent months learning what little they knew about alien languages and customs. The space station grew larger and larger as they got closer. Captain Hyanwu could see ships from many different worlds docked at the station. Some ships looked like smooth silver eggs, while others had sharp angles and glowing lights. He wondered what the aliens who built those ships looked like. A voice came over the radio in broken English. "Welcome human ship to Nexus Prime. Please follow the blue lights to docking bay 7. Captain Hyanwu took control of the ship and carefully guided it toward the docking bay. The blue lights made a path through the darkness, and he followed them exactly. The docking bay was huge enough to hold 20 ships like theirs. When they landed with a soft thump, Captain Hyanwu turned off the engines. "This is it," he said to his team. "Remember, we are representing all of humanity today. Let us make a good first impression." The 4 humans walked to the airlock and waited as it opened with a hiss. The air that came in smelled strange, but it was safe to breathe. They stepped out onto the metal floor of the docking bay and looked around. Everything was much bigger than they had expected. The ceiling was so high they could barely see it. A group of aliens was waiting for them, but they were standing much farther away than Captain Hyanwu had expected. At least 50 meters separated the humans from the aliens. It seemed like an odd way to greet visitors, but maybe aliens had different customs. The aliens looked nothing like humans. The tallest one had pale blue skin and 4 arms. It wore flowing robes that seemed to move in a wind that was not there. Its eyes were large and completely black. Another alien looked like a giant insect with green armor covering its body. It had 6 legs and wings that buzzed quietly. The third alien was the strangest of all. It looked like it was made of living crystal that caught the light and threw it back in rainbow colors. "Welcome humans to Nexus Prime," said the blue-skinned alien. Its voice was soft and musical, but there was something cold about it. "I am Ambassador Veltar of the Valorian Empire." Captain Hyanwu stepped forward with a smile. "We are honored to be here, Ambassador Veltar. I am Captain Hyanwu of Earth. This is Dr. Sojin, our chief scientist, Colonel Taemin, our military advisor, and Jiwoo, our diplomat. We have come hoping to join the galactic community." Ambassador Veltar made a gesture with 2 of its 4 hands. "Please follow us, but maintain your distance. We must take you to a special room first." The humans looked at each other with confusion, but they followed the aliens through the space station. The hallways were wide and tall with strange symbols on the walls. Other aliens they passed quickly moved away when they saw the humans coming. Some even ran in the opposite direction. "Why is everyone avoiding us?" Jiwoo whispered to Captain Hyanwu. "Do not know," he whispered back, "but something is wrong here." They were led to a room with thick metal walls and a heavy door that sealed shut behind them. The room had chairs that were too big for humans and a table in the center. Ambassador Veltar and the other aliens stood on the far side of the room, as far from the humans as possible. "Please sit," Ambassador Veltar said. "We have much to discuss." Captain Hyanwu and his team sat down in the uncomfortable chairs. Dr. Sojin opened her bag and took out a small device that would translate languages, but Ambassador Veltar held up a hand to stop her. "It will not be necessary. We have been monitoring your species for many years. We know your languages. Will monitoring us?" Colonel Taemin asked, his voice sharp. "Why have you been watching us without making contact?" Ambassador Veltar was quiet for a long moment. Its black eyes seemed to look right through the humans. "We have been studying your species to determine if you are safe to contact. What we found has shocked the entire Galactic Council." "Safe?" Captain Hyanwu asked. "What do you mean safe?" The crystal alien stepped forward and spoke in a voice like wind chimes. "We have calculated something that has never been seen before in the galaxy. Your species, Earth humans, have a kill count that exceeds your current population." Sojin frowned. "A kill count? What exactly do you mean?" Veltar touched a control on the table and a holographic display appeared above them, showing Earth numbers, and charts filled the air. "The total number of humans killed by other humans throughout your history is over 70 billion beings. Your current population is only 8 billion. The room fell silent. The humans stared at the numbers in shock. "That is impossible," Jiwoo said. "We have never had that many people on Earth at one time." "No," Ambassador Veltar agreed, "but you have been killing each other for thousands of years. Wars, murders, genocides, individual acts of violence. The numbers add up. Your species has killed more of its own kind than currently exists." Colonel Taemin stood up slowly. "Those are historical events. We have grown beyond that. We are more civilized now." The insect alien clicked its mandibles and spoke. "Every species we have contacted has some violence in their history, but never like this. Most civilizations have kill counts that are less than 1% of their population. Your species has achieved something we thought impossible." Sojin was looking at the numbers, trying to understand them. "But that includes everything from ancient wars to recent conflicts. You cannot judge our entire species based on our worst moments. We judge you based on facts." Ambassador Veltar said coldly, "You are the most dangerous species we have ever encountered. The Galactic Council has classified Earth as a death world and humans as a threat to galactic peace." Hyanwu felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. "We came here in peace. We want to join your community and share knowledge and culture." Ambassador Veltar made another gesture with its hands. "That may be true, but can you guarantee that your violent nature will not surface again? Can you promise that humans will never kill again?" The humans looked at each other. They all knew they could not make such a promise, I thought. Not Ambassador Veltar said. The Galactic Council has decided to offer you two choices. You can submit to genetic modification that will remove your aggressive tendencies and then be allowed limited contact with other species, or you can return to Earth and remain isolated forever. Captain Hyan-Wu felt his world crashing down around him. This was not how first contact was supposed to go. We refuse both options, then you choose isolation. Ambassador Veltar said no. Captain Hyan-Wu said firmly, we choose a third option. Give us time to prove that humanity has changed. Give us a chance to show that we can use our strength to protect rather than destroy. The aliens whispered among themselves in languages the humans could not understand. Finally, Ambassador Veltar spoke again. Very well. You will have one standard galactic year to prove your worth. But know this, if you fail or if any human commits an act of violence during this time, you will be permanently banned from galactic civilization. Captain Hyan-Wu nodded. We accept those terms. Veltar moved toward the door. The meeting is over. You will be escorted back to your ship. As the humans walked back through the space station, Captain Hyan-Wu realized that everything had changed. They had come hoping to join a community, but instead, they had learned that the galaxy saw them as monsters. Now they had to prove that monsters could choose to be heroes. But deep down, Captain Hyan-Wu wondered if the aliens were right. Could humans really change their nature, or were they doomed to be forever seen as the violent species from the death world called Earth?